Hello, Carolyn, are you there?
Hi, Latonya. Hey,
Hi.
hi. Is the
Are
meeting
we
at
in the
1
right
or
place? Um,
1:30? I thought we went to the classroom site.
Me too. I was just checking Slack. I don't see anything, so I'm gonna
Yeah,
send.
yeah, me either. Huh, I wonder, is it at 1:30?
No, she well, unless she changed it, she definitely said one.
All right,
But
so
then
I
she
can,
said it was like her baby's birthday or something. I feel like other people would be on here with us by now, though.
yeah, so do I. And I don't remember about the birthday. I never trouble remembering what day it is. Um, the invite to Syracuse.io,
Mm-hmm.
did you have trouble finding the channel in Slack?
No, well, I was already a member.
Because yeah, and I've been in Meetup since 2017, and I've been in a couple other groups, which you're probably part of that. But I got the impression there was actually a channel called that, and I
No, they were. Yeah, that's what I thought.
can't find it.
Oh, let me see. I can try to find it. I'm just trying to see.
What I
I'm
ended
just
up
seeing
doing,
articles, huh?
yeah, I ended up going into my own Meetup account and going into Syracuse IO and inviting myself to the group is how I did
Oh,
it.
you did.
If I went, because I'm already, if I went
Yeah.
by Laura's invitation, it wanted me to create a new account. And it's like, I have been doing this since Matthew was in hackathons, my son.
Oh,
I jumped in to meet up back then. Yeah,
okay.
he's the one that got all this started by doing some hackathons, and that's how I met Jesse. And
Oh, nice.
yeah, and then he and I chatted about the situation I was in. So this is just very nice.
Yeah,
So,
that's
but yeah,
wonderful. I'm
it's
actually
an
trying to see if
email.
I can find it. Here it is.
Yeah, let me look. Yeah, let me look in email. As far as the meeting thingy goes, let me look at email and see if there's anything. There's way too much information going back and
Yeah, I
forth.
mean, I just went through and I found the message where Christy responded about the meeting, and she literally just says, apologies, it's going to be from 1 to 2. So I wonder if she's just running late and maybe nobody else wanted to go. Like that's the
Be
only thing I
nice
can
out.
think because I
Yeah,
don't
bring your
know.
laptop outside.
Yeah,
Um, let's
I can't
see.
think of why we would be in the wrong spot, is what I'm
It's
saying.
usually the classroom spot, right?
I think so. I think that we only
Mm,
switched the career one because she said they were actually meeting at the same time. Remember, she was like,
right.
they're meeting now. So I feel like we weren't given a different link for
Let's
the other
see here.
stuff, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe something
Where I'm not
changed.
seeing a thing from.
Oh, no, she
Um,
just responded. She said same link as class. So
Christy.
I think she's just running a little late. Let's just hang
Oh,
out.
you sent her a Slack?
I did, yeah, a personal
Okay, all
direct
right,
message.
okay. So, she knows we're hanging out. You know,
Yeah.
she shouldn't leave us here because we might get into trouble.
Yeah, she just said, hey, everyone, office hours are starting here in a second. Apologies. I lost track of time. I'm gonna say no worries. We'll wait.
Yeah, we're here. We're the group, the faithful groupies are here.
Yeah.
So you attended Dana's assistive technology thing too. That's good. I actually
Mhm.
signed up for that. Oh gosh. It might have even been before I knew I was doing boot camp.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I mean, as you've heard me drone on and on, this is one of my areas of passion that I was passionate about before it was cool. When I worked up
Mhm.
at SU, I would talk to the powers that be about, we should make these sites accessible, blah, blah, blah. And of course, back then it was
Yeah.
like, oh, yeah. And then it became, we worked on, they were Department of Ed sites that we
Oh,
were in
okay.
charge. And so then it became this mandated thing where, you have to make sure government sites are compliant. And of course, compliance has changed over the years, but that's when
Yeah.
I learned about W3C. And I got so excited. I was in my graduate school at night, working full time in the daytime, 6-year master's degree from hell. But anyway, I wrote some papers on it, and this thing called an ERIC digest, the ERIC system, the Educational Resources Information Center, which is this big database of resources for teachers. And now it's all centralized, but there used to be individual clearinghouses, and the School of Information Studies housed one of them, and I was in that. And then
Oh.
the projects within that.
Mhm.
Um, So, I wrote papers about assistive technology and W3C, and of course, it's all outdated now, but that was, the thing. And I was just really into it. So when I was interviewing with Dana and she mentioned it, I was like, oh my goodness, this is so great. Because it's like it kind of ended,
Mhm.
and I didn't do anything with it. And now maybe I can pick it up and maybe
Yeah.
kind of follow in footsteps of helping. Yeah, I got to help people. That's just me. I can't help it.
Yeah.
Curse.
Yeah. That's good though.
So she will be along, and it might just be the trio here. Yeah.
Yeah. Dana just responded saying she must have lost track of time too.
Yeah. I am. Well, actually, she said I'll see you in class after our
Oh,
little
I know.
gizmo, right?
Yeah, but I think she probably, because I know when we hung up, I was like, wow, we don't have that much time. And I was trying to get my job readiness stuff done so that I could focus on the visual design homework. And I
There's
ended
so
up
much to
charging my
do this
computer for
weekend.
like,
It's like, what
huh?
do I do?
I'm sorry.
I never finished the wireframe with like the flex and the
Oh, I think that Max
who
said you don't even
cares.
have to worry about that. It looks
No,
like
at
Christy's
some
on.
point I'll go back and play because that'll be fun. Like
Yeah,
Flexbox Froggy, I want to get past the level. But
yeah.
that's not important right now. But still, I struggle with that damn thing. First of all, the Envision software wouldn't play nice with me. And then
Oh,
I was missing everything he was doing. Couldn't see it. And then when I finally got my account squared away, I was like 3 days behind. And I should have just put it on a freaking piece of paper.
yeah, yeah, because that's always
Um,
fun. I'm actually doing that for this homework. I said, I'm just gonna
yeah,
do it by
pencil and
hand.
paper will not fail you unless the pencil breaks. Um, Good old
Right.
days. But so
So
I
Dana's
spent the
on with
entire
us and
weekend on that
Caitlin.
one thing because when I dropped the grid in back of my code, I
Mhm.
couldn't see it because it was rendering on my computer a very pale yellow.
Oh,
So I
did
had
you
to
change
take
your
on,
settings?
maybe I had to go in
Oh,
and unchange. I like to explore under the hood of the hood,
yeah.
um, under the car. But I went back and it took me several hours to troubleshoot that so I could see the grid. So I included all this in my little notes when I handed it in so they could see all the gymnastics I went through. But I spent the entire weekend on this stupid grid project. It was stupid to spend. So then what was left to do, a lot of
I'll be
lessons
right back.
learned.
I gotta be right back. Gotta grab some water.
A lot of lessons learned in that one.
Yeah, it's been a good ride so far, I think.
Yeah,
learning.
it's full-time plus. Like my husband's picking up a
yeah.
lot of slack.
It's nice though that you're in a house full of coders. Like that must be awesome.
Yeah, it is.
Hey guys, I'm here. I'm just stuffing my face with a little bit of lunch. That was why I lost track of time. We were a little later eating lunch than we
You're
intended.
cool.
Okay.
I'm having cashews, raisins, Coca-Cola, because that's nutritious, and water. So you may see me chewing a bit.
I have to check and see if my Grubhub water is.
Hey, Dana, I haven't seen you forever.
Did someone call my name? I had my
I
headphones
said,
off.
haven't seen you forever, Dana.
Oh, okay. Hey, yeah. Like,
We're just, in meetups.
oh, I gotta run to my door and grab this delivery real quick. I'll be back, guys. Okay.
So aside from like homework adjustments in terms of like just time, how are things going?
I need 48 hours in a day, 14 days a week.
Yeah, I need to not sleep or bathe or
No. Well, no. Self-care skills. Do not let those go.
and I
if
think
you
I'm
can't
pretty
really bathe or
organized, but it's
shower,
a
at least,
lot.
wipe yourself down, right?
Yeah, right. Just spritz.
Just some.
I actually spent all of yesterday catching up on the visual design stuff because it just felt like so much.
We'll
I
get there.
think it's okay. It just makes for more challenging days, but I like because it's helping me just to really prioritize and
Yeah, it's boot
whatnot.
camp.
So I
I
can't
mean it.
complain.
Yeah, it's just a tough, it's the advantage and disadvantage of going through a boot camp is it's just everybody that I've ever talked to that's gone through a boot camp often like and even if you come out like with a job right away, which like that's kind of our goal for you guys is to get you guys as close to like the job process as possible by the end of it, but like you still end up spending a significant amount of time like frankly for even like 6 months after like diving into and like relearning and kind of so like it's one of those things where get as much as you can the first time around, but don't freak out if you're feeling like I'm not an expert in like this. It's just like honestly, it really is very much a we want to expose you to all the things that exist in the industry and get you a baseline of like fluency in stuff. But then the reality is past the sort of baseline fluency, there's a million different specialties, most of which like you can kind of Google your way into. Like if you know what exists, it helps you ask the right questions into search, and then you actually like, frankly, okay, just as an example, the number of times that I like code an HTML form, like a whole form from scratch, is super minimal. Like I probably do it like twice a year, maybe. And so like I know how to format like an input element and like all those different pieces, but when it comes to like formatting a whole form so that it'll just like function correctly right out of the gate, I always look it up. Like it's just one of those things because it's easier to just look it up and have the documentation right there and make sure that I don't miss anything than it is to like I think I know how to do this. I think I can probably do it correctly. And then just like spend 3 hours debugging the thing that I just like faultily set up. It's just faster to like look up the documentation, use it as reference, and just go. So it's just I guess what I'm saying is like, even when you get a lot of experience, you still Google all the time. So
yeah, when I well, I can't say when I started, but when I was, interested in it, after having been introduced by somebody else that went through cohort 1, I found out quickly that like I actually thought that when you did coding, you had to do all your own, and it was kind of like pirating to take other people's code and stuff. And so it just seems, the reality is just so much different from that. Like it's not at all. What, Caitlin?
Huh?
What were you saying?
You saw me wanted to say something, huh? I was just gonna say, like, like you'll often find there are lots and lots of people who are developers who are more than happy to share their code too, because they know that, like, there's no point in reinventing the wheel, right? Like, if something works, it works. And if you can find something that works well for the purpose that you need it for, then, you know, it's a time saver. And, you know, at the end of the day, developers are like, the whole community of developers, in my personal opinion, has been extremely like welcoming and helpful, and like just incredibly generous and friendly, and more than happy to teach and give advice and all kinds of things. So that's just like one big perk about this type of work in the community, is that, like, it's just really amazing that people are just like so willing to help each other all the time.
Yeah.
And so supportive. So it's definitely not stealing. There are definitely times when you should like credit people, but you know, for the most part, people are like super happy to share. There's a lot of like open source code that you can mess with and tweak, and you know, that's it.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
And
I
I
mean,
feel like
it's
we're reflections of
okay.
each other, right? Like, what do
Yeah.
you want? Like, you would think every industry would want everyone to do well because we reflect on each other. And
Right.
so, you know, I don't know.
Well, it's a very it's a funny line, right? Because like you can't just take like a whole code base from somebody and like pass it off as something you wrote. Like, A, that's just not going to go well for you, and B, it's illegal, right? So like it's just, there's like a balance, because oftentimes, like, especially once you get past the very, very basic level of like questions you're Googling for, like oftentimes I get to the point where like I Google for stuff and I very rarely like straight copy stuff out of Stack Overflow. I would actually suggest that as a general rule, you just don't get in the habit of never doing that, because often it's going to introduce weird stuff into your code that you just don't notice. And if you have to make yourself go through and like type out the pieces that they're doing, you're more likely to notice the like weird stuff. But like also a lot of times what I do is like I see how somebody solved a similar type of problem that I'm trying to solve, and then I kind of like try to understand the logic behind what they're doing, and then I apply that logic to the problem I'm solving. So I end up writing my own code, and it may look somewhat similar to what they're doing, but it's different than like what I'm really borrowing is the problem solving, like how they approach the problem, and like maybe a piece of like knowledge about how a particular feature worked that I didn't know, then more than like their actual like code.
I like to call that modeling. Modeling. Yeah.
That's a good name for it. Yeah. And sorry, I didn't ignore, not to ignore your question, LaSonia, about the wireframes. So ideally creating a wireframe, it would be a potential page from your capstone. So in that sense, it would be connected to part 1 and 2, but it doesn't have to be like, it's not like we're not going to dictate which page you wireframe, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, so it's one of those, feel free to start wireframing wherever you feel like it's useful. So, and I think from kind of just hearing people chat about their capstones, like I think people are probably going to have very different problems they're trying to solve. And so they're going to have different solutions that like make sense. So we can't just be like, wireframe your homepage, because like, depending on what you're building, that may not really be a thing. So, oh yeah, this is the whiteboard that I didn't have in class on my background. I was too lazy to turn my background on today.
Nice.
But I will say the one downside of the like whiteboard board is that they don't clean up quite as well. I did a little bit of research before I bought this, and I basically like scrub it with WD-40 like once every couple months, and it like actually seems to clean it really well. You just have to keep doing it. Like it's one of those like once you start, you can't like be like, oh, I don't feel like doing this anymore. But anyways, whiteboards.
So can I just kind of float my capstone, because I haven't really had a chance to talk to anyone about it. And I'm just worried about the whole solving a problem thing. So I actually submitted, I think it was like 3 different ideas. And then I really feel strongly about developing an e-commerce site where I'm selling content that I've generated. So it would be like photos and video, and maybe person that out across 3 categories. And so the problem I would be solving is basically like for myself, organization of that kind of content that I have, and then having a scalable platform, through which I continue to do that and maybe generate some passive income. Is that something that would like suffice as a capstone, or should I be looking to do something else?
I mean, I think it's okay to solve a problem for yourself. Like so I don't know if you guys have run it. I think Max mentioned it, like just as an example, the project management software Basecamp. They actually built that for their company. Like that, I'm not saying they built that as a product for their company. Like the project, the guys at Basecamp built the Basecamp software to use as project management software inside of their company. And then like they were talking to other people about it and figured out like other people were like, we would pay you for this. Like we would love to be able to have access to this. And then they adjusted it and scaled it and started selling it as a product. Because they actually started as like a consultancy and became like a software product shop. I think that would be like potentially a really great way to learn. If you were trying to do that as a business model, I would probably tell you, like as a general business model, I'd probably tell you that there's enough other services that will allow you to sell your content, like platforms that will allow you to sell your content in that way. They do take a cut, but they're much simpler. I have some stuff out there like that I just like have, and they just cut me a check.
Yeah, because I actually like I already have Wix and WordPress. Like I'm on other platforms, and I just thought, well, it'd be nice to have a portfolio piece that I did from scratch that also serves this other function.
Oh yeah. And well, that's what I'm saying. Like you're allowed to solve your own problems. Like it's not like the reason I was talking about like the whole like you are not your user thing is because that's like, believe it or not, that's become a revolutionary concept probably in the last 10 years in terms of software, is that like often the people designing software are designing software for themselves, which is, it's not a bad, like, it's not like that's a terrible thing to do. But it also makes it even more problematic that the people designing and building the software are not necessarily representative of the entire population as a whole. And so that becomes like, you guys have probably seen the meme on I think I saw it on Twitter. It was like somebody who was trying to get like an automated, like one of those like sensor things to work, like for like soap or like paper towels or something. And he couldn't, and he was brown, and he couldn't get it to work. Like he just like the sensor wouldn't recognize that he existed. And he like went and grabbed a white paper towel and put his hand on it, like put it on top of his hand and put the towel under the sensor, and the sensor worked immediately. And he was like, this is why we need real diversity in product design teams, because like clearly if there had been someone who had a different skin tone when they were testing the product, well, but it's a reality, right? Like, and it's just representative though, right? Like it's all about like skin color, right? It's also about like diversity of experience and like opinions too. So, and like, so the wider, and they figured out like the more well-rounded in terms of like different life experiences, like that teams are, the better the products are that they build, which intuitively makes sense, but it's one of those intuitive things that's taken the industry a really long time to get there. And like, it's just part of, like, I got my first job. They actually told me like, I'd been working there like 18 months or something. And they were like, yeah, actually there were 2 candidates when we were hiring you, like that were like, you guys were both like really equal. And we basically hired you because like you were female and like we needed the diversity of people on the team. And like, they were like, this was in the context of like, we're super glad we hired you. But like, it is just it's technically illegal for it to be a factor in people's hiring decisions, but it also is like a factor in people's hiring decisions, right? Like, because it's just, the world is weird. And and it can work both directions. It can be a positive and a negative depending on who you're talking to.
Good
So
question, Christy. And if you don't want to answer this, I will back off. But they were pretty upfront and basically saying, well, we hired you because you're a woman.
I mean, my boss didn't explicitly say that, but one of my
I mean,
it
you
was
obviously
one of
had
my
more to
coworkers.
offer than your
Yeah.
female.
Yeah. Well, no. What they were saying
But-
was basically like, it was a couple of my senior coworkers who were like, had been part of the like hiring committee process when they were making the decision. And they were basically just like, you guys were just like otherwise completely equal. And that was basically one of my distinguishing factors.
Right, but I'm just wondering, and again, you don't have to answer this, but I'm throwing it out there just as a thing. How do you feel about something like that? It's like, we hired you because you were, we hired you because you weren't. I mean, it's like, don't do me any favors because I'm a woman. I mean, why didn't you just hire me because I'm really good? Or
Well, but at the time, it was my first job. Like, I didn't have a huge portfolio. I didn't have a ton of experience. Like, and so, like, if it had been in the context of like, I was being reprimanded for something bad I had done, like, it would have been different. But it was more of like they were just being honest about the fact that it was like, we've been really glad we hired you. Like, if anything, by the end of it, there was like me and one other guy that they had hired around the same time that they like asked us to fill out like a personality psych eval kind of a profile thing, because they were like, you guys have been really effective in these roles. We need to find more people like you. I was like, okay, this is weird, but sure.
I'd like to jump into this conversation. So a lot of companies find themselves in a situation where they want their workforce to look more like what the real world looks like, not just their small world. And so the push to say, I've hired you because you're a woman or because of this or that has to be taken in context. Over the years, there have been this big push in HR departments towards more diversity. Whole committees are set up for this. And so I'm looking at it contextually versus on just focusing on that word. Even though you said it that way, when you look at it from the other side, these are like mandates from the top down within a lot of different companies, and HR departments are being reviewed and audited to prove that they are demonstrating hiring practices that are fair across groups. And so when given that Christy was just as experienced as this other person, and they're both equal in that aspect, which is what I thought I heard, when also giving that overlying factor of, well, can we hire X and also meet our diversity goals, or hire this person and not meet the diversity goals? I'm going to try to keep my job as an HR representative and try to help my company meet diversity as well. If I can get the diversity that I want, as well as help them to meet the diversity goals, I'm going to do that, because as an HR manager, I'm also trying to keep my job. So it doesn't, and I'll just stop by saying it doesn't necessarily come down to, oh, I like her, she's a woman. A lot of times, because I have been in a situation where I've had to hire, your superiors want you to fulfill certain diversity mandates or guidelines within the company.
Yeah, and I had no idea until my colleague mentioned that, as a factor in the hiring process. I had no idea that that was the case. So it wasn't like they were treating me differently. I was the only female dev on the team at the time, but it wasn't like I was being treated differently because of that. So I think there's, and this was also long enough ago, I'm pretty sure, and it was a privately owned company. So I'm pretty sure they actually probably weren't, there were no specific
mandates.
Yeah, Caitlin, I'm pretty sure there were no specific mandates. It was just it also helped that my boss, so there was actually, it was an interesting dynamic, because all the devs on my team besides me were male at the time I was hired, but the managing, the developer manager was actually female. So there was some interesting balances there. Okay. But it really it's just it's part of who I am, right? I can't, remove my gender from who I am. It's part of what I bring to any job. So it is like, it's a weird area because, like I said, it's a legally protected category, but often people, like Dana said, like if all else equal, like in the sense of like, we have two really qualified candidates and one of them like is outside of the mold from the standard person, like the standard person that tends to work in the department, like it's often that the person that is outside of the mold is going to get hired.
I think
So
someone's
people,
always
like-
going to have a problem. And it's just going to be human nature where you are going to have some people who are okay with that and some people who will have a problem with it. You absolutely cannot get away from it. And when you come into any workforce, you just have to be ready to deal with that. Christy, I don't know if you were trying to talk. I think you're on mute. Oh,
So I don't
sure,
know
I'll
if we
take
wanna
some
keep-
food. Sorry,
Sorry, I
Latonia,
didn't
go
mean to
ahead.
interrupt, Dana.
No, I
Oh,
was
okay.
done. I was
I was just
done.
gonna say I cracked open my book and that thing is packed. The book you recommended, Christy, the typography for the web, and I was up at some crazy hour last night printing cheat sheets, and it's just, my goodness.
Don't feel like you have to go through that whole thing before you feel qualified to deal with typography, just for the record. Like, it's just a really solid resource. I think I had that book on my bedside table for like 2 years before I actually got around to reading it. It's unusual to find a typography resource that's written for people who are actually like building for the web. And so that's part of why I like so highly recommended it. It's just like all the other typography resources I've run across are like intended at like, they're high level because they're intended at like people who are doing design professionally or people who are like looking into like becoming like type designers, or like they're very, very like heady and like frankly really, really dry. And his writing's intense, but it's like, it's at least approachable as like applicable stuff because he's a design dev person. So yeah. That's why I was like, read the email series. If you like the email series, go for the book. Because the book is like the email series on like.
Yeah, it was definitely worthwhile. It was, yeah, we're getting a ton of resources from you all. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a similar goal about designing a typeface in my life, but I started at one point when I was younger, and I will probably never finish because I got through like 3 letters, and I was just like, oh, this is gonna take forever. I think I'm done.
That's so funny.
Speaking of resources, what are you all doing to stay organized? We just had Will Giesbond come in and talk about strategies towards organizing. So how are you all doing with that? I know you all probably had some strategies in place already.
Can you see my 3-ring binder, or is my background interfering?
The background is interfering, but I
Well,
hear
anyway,
it.
3-ring binder, separate folders, one for class with each module sectioned off by itself, and da-da-da-da-da.
I make lots of
Did
lists.
that the other day. I'm so proud of myself because otherwise I just had notes, wherever. I knew where they were,
Mhm.
which would have driven me crazy years ago, but I've learned to deal with that. But yeah, 3-ring binder, that works for me.
You know what my problem is? I make lists and then they're on like random pieces of paper and they're everywhere and I have no idea where my lists are or what's on them. And just
It's the
I
same
love
for
it.
me.
I have like ADD. I have like a random envelope here, like a piece of paper there, some sticky
Don't
notes
seem ADD to
somewhere.
me. If you are, that's fine too, but no, Confessions of a Developer. I love it. That's what we need to have a series that we do. True
I have
Confessions of
started
a
using it.
Developer.
Yeah, I have started using in Trello more. I was using it for a while and then I stopped and I started using it again. And I use like Google Docs a lot to just like dump crap in the Google Doc and I'll put like a date on it so that I can find it again. But
Yeah, there's I actually should have showed you guys this because it's a really nice resource for people who are into like hand note taking, but you want to have a digital. So I like to handwrite notes, but I hate having to go back and read them. Like I want to be able to make my handwritten notes like findable, because I just like the longer I've been a dev, the like less patience I have for actually like reading through large blocks of things. I'm just like, if I can't like command F and like type in what I'm looking for and just let it like search, like half the time I'm like, oh, okay, whatever, move on. Like I don't care. I didn't want to know that bad anyways, whatever. This thing is super cool. This company, Everlast, so the company is actually Rocketbook. They have made, Caitlin, you've probably seen these at work, because I'm solely responsible for getting these like started at Raymore.
I have, and I have a friend outside of work that uses it, and I was like, that's freaking awesome. It's so cool. Explain
They
it.
make a bunch of different versions of them. They actually, their first product, these guys were like a startup. Their first product, it's a reusable note. So like the basic concept, it's a reusable notebook that they have. So the company is called Rocketbook. So if you look up Rocketbook notebooks, they have a ton of different ones at this point. But they have an application as well, if you can get on your cell phone. So each of the pages has here, this is like planning for a graphic I was doing. So each of the pages has like a QR code in the bottom. And what it does is you can take a picture using the app, and the app will basically capture the page. And then the app now actually, their app by itself will actually do, like it converts handwriting into text. It makes its best guess about what the text is. So it makes your like handwritten notes actually like text searchable. I used to do the same thing before their app did it by just uploading. No, so the book's not electronic. This is literally just like a notebook. This particular one is actually, it's washable, which sounds crazy. It's made out of like polyester. So it comes with like a rag, and I just wipe it with like a rag and water when I'm done with it. And then it just starts over. Like I can just start over writing on it. But it uses these, I can put links to both of these things if you're curious about them. But these friction pens are like these special washable pens, basically. So it's like a combination of two things. You can't just write on it with everything, with anything. But I think, I don't remember exactly how expensive this notebook was, but it was probably like, it was in the $30 range. And I've been using it for like 3 years now. And so like the pen, and then the pens are like, I don't know, 10 or 12 bucks for a pack of pens. They're not that bad, and they last for a pretty good amount of time. But it's nice because like I was already using Evernote to like organize my notes, and so like digital notes, and so I just basically set it up so it would dump my like photo notes of my notebook into my Evernote, and then the photo notes would actually come up based off of the words that were in my notes, like handwritten ones. Which was just a really good solution for me, because like I said, I'm super lazy about like, I like the process of like taking notes, and like doing it helps me like remember things. But when it comes to like, I know I wrote this down somewhere, like I just have zero patience for like having a stack of notebooks, like having to like flip through them to like figure out where stuff is. And I'm not as good as Carolyn is about putting things in binders. So it's just the pens are just, they're like
an organizational ruse. A 3-ring binder makes people think you got it together, you know?
Yeah. Well, I am a big fan of organizational systems that don't require me to continue maintaining them, if at all possible.
Yeah.
So I try to make as many of those in life as possible. I don't successfully do it for everything, but yeah, these have been I use them a little less now than I did before, only because so many of my meetings are digital that I'll just like, I'll often just type notes because it just works. But yeah, for my old job in particular, like it was super helpful when I was physically going to meetings all the time. I didn't have my computer with me. Like it was just way easier to like write stuff down. And basically my boss was like encouraging us to like go out and buy an iPad, like our personal iPad to like bring to work to use for notes. And I was just like, you're telling me to go spend $800. Like, I was like, I'm gonna find a better solution. And so then I just ended up like searching around, and I ended up running across these notebooks. And but yeah, so they're really fun. It's a non-tech related, but I like them. And they're good because I can draw stuff, like I can draw diagrams and things, and I can label them and then have them come up. So, all right, advertisement for Rocketbook over.
Oh, I'm sorry, y'all. I got to step away again. I have another delivery. Sorry about that. Be right back.
Okay.
That was good, Christy. I like stuff like that. And I struggle to write in a straight line. I don't know what it is, but I like being able just to like draw arrows and, you know, all that kind of creepy stuff.
I'm a very visual note taker. So like I include a lot of like, like I'll draw stuff when I'm writing things and like arrows. And these are actually, I think they make lined ones and they make completely blank ones, but I actually have dot matrix ones, which are really great. Like, cause that have the dots, like, that let you, you can hold them whichever direction you want, or I can also reuse them for wire, like they're great for wireframing, because like if you want to easily line stuff up, you just draw from one dot to the other, which is handy. And they make them in, this is, at the time I bought it, that was the biggest size they made. It's like a full 8.5 by 11. They make littler ones too. And maybe they make bigger ones by now, I don't know. Their first notebook though, I thought it was hilarious. You actually microwaved it to erase it. So it's really funny. The inside cover of this notebook actually says, "Do not microwave this notebook." Like this is a normal thing that people do, is put their notebook in the microwave.
That's funny.
But it was their like flagship product. It was like a microwavable one that let you like erase the whole thing. I like the water one, I think, better. Like it's a little annoying because you have to like dry the pages so they don't stick together when you're like washing it. But at least you can like pick which page you don't have to like erase the whole notebook. If you want to just erase like a couple of pages, you can.
Warning, do not try this at home.
Yeah.
So who does?
Don't put your notebook in the
Everybody,
microwave.
do not put your toaster in the tub.
That.
No. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I think, it looks like they sell them all over the place now, because like I got mine off of Amazon, but like that was sort of the only place you could get them. And now they have them tons of places. But it's just nice that their app integrates with like basically every every cloud service. So whatever you use to like keep track of stuff, you can use, which is nice. And these pens are like erasable, but they're erasable based off of heat. So like they have like a rubber thing on the back. Yeah, the friction pens. And these are just nice in general because I like to be able to erase stuff.
What did you say? You said they're erasable, but they're erasable based on something, and I didn't hear
Heat.
that.
Like it's heat. So there's like, this is like a rubber thing, but it's not like an eraser in the sense that you think of like a regular eraser. It's like a hard rubber. And on regular paper, you can write with these, and then you just like scrub really hard with this, and it'll erase it.
Because it causes the friction and the heat.
Yeah,
And
like that doesn't work on those on the washable notebooks, because it damages the like surface of the paper. But like on regular paper, it works great. So they're kind of a cool product independently of each other. All right. Anyway, sorry, I said I was done with my ad, but I apparently wasn't.
I have some of those somewhere. I just don't know where.
Yeah, I'll put a link to their notebook in the chat. This is the like company, and you can get them on Amazon and like a bunch of other places too.
When we were doing assistive technology up at the school, we used to actually recommend a notebook similar to what you just demonstrated, Christy, except instead of capturing the images, it would actually capture the classroom audio. And at any point during time in class, if there was something that you wanted to bookmark, well, first of all, the pen was recording what the professor was saying. And then what you would do is the pen would also allow you to write your notes. And if there was a moment in time when he was lecturing that you wanted to go back and hear it, instead of having to scrub back and forth through a timeline, the way that we do with the videos, all you would have to do was go back to that point in time. So let's say he was discussing quantum theory and you were like, oh, this is interesting. You could mark an X or make a dot on your notebook paper and then come back to that. It would create some type of a digital stamp within your notebook at that time. And you would just tap on that area, and that at the time that he was conversating, it would, you could hear what he was saying from your pen. So without
Okay.
having, yeah, without having to scrub back and forth, and the students really liked it.
There's a kind of an interesting platform I used for work for a while that was it's called usertesting.com, which is actually, if you're ever working for like a client with that's willing to like give you a few $100 to do testing on, like beta testing on an app, or like even on wireframes, or like a basic prototype. It's kind of fun because you can basically put in the sort of rough guidelines for like who your users are. So if like your users are all located in a specific place, or like a specific like demographic, you can basically put that in, and they have it's this huge website where they'll actually, like, they basically pay people like by a certain amount, and you can run like various tests. So you can be like, you put your prototype up into a publicly available place and you give them the link, and you like set the test up of what you want people to do, and people run through the link and they like give you audio feedback. Like they're basically doing it with their camera on, and they just talk to you while they're like doing the test. But they have a similar thing where you can like note different like versions. You can be like, I like that piece, or like you can make kinds of like all kinds of stuff with video. But anyways, that was only loosely related. I think the recording pens are cooler.
It's all cool.
They sound
Anyways.
expensive. How much were they? Do you remember the pens, the recording pens?
So the recording pens with a couple of notebooks to come with them, I think was somewhere around the $100 range.
Oh, that's not as bad as I would
Mhm.
expect.
Nope. So that would be the package, and then all you would be responsible for doing would be just to continue getting the notebooks. They do cost a little more than the average notebook. I don't remember the exact price range, but it was the pen itself that caused the initial price to be higher. But then after that, it was really just a matter of getting the notebooks. But the school that I was working at, we actually kept a supply for the students. So when they would go through one notebook, they could come in and get refills. And we didn't ask for the notebooks back because of course the notebooks had their notes in them, but
It's really cool.
we actually started them off, and some students would just get their own, but some students would come back and say, hey, can you give me a few more notebooks? And we just give it to them.
Neat.
And I can try to find out the name of it, but Tonya, I don't remember the name at this point, but I can try to pull it up for you.
So how are you guys feeling about the capstone stuff for Monday?
I haven't even been able to think about that yet because I got to do the visual stuff from the first half of the week and some more stuff for Dana's part. I'm thinking about it. I just haven't done it yet. That's
I
me.
think I think if you have an idea and you kind of like, the wireframing won't be as hard as you think, and it's always something you can adjust. Like it's not set in stone. Like once you pick that, that's what you have to do. So I wouldn't stress too much about it, but it's like the whole point is to get you thinking about like what you might need to work with and like how you might start solving the problem that you're trying to solve. And like you're always going to iterate through different versions. So like my capstone did
Exactly.
not start the way that it ended at all. Like I mean it was close, but it like really was not, it was not the same thing that I started with. So just keep that in mind. Like don't try to like, it's like Dana said that too about her bus tracker app. Like it definitely, like you definitely like go through, actually I don't think I want it this way anymore, because as you realize, when you're coding it out and it's not, you're not using it the way that you thought you would. So you have to change things. So there's that. It's just to get you guys thinking and really like starting to.
I did have a second thought on my capstone. I think I want to build an app to cure the common cold. You think that might be too broad?
Yeah, probably.
Maybe. Which variant of the common cold?
Oh, good Lord. Now I got to go to medical school and learn this stuff, Dana? Come on. Mine is going to help people with depression, anxiety, and the like. It's going to have different parts to it. One where they can do a gratitude journal, one where they can put images, photos, whatever that inspire them or help them. Yeah, I haven't figured it all out yet, but stuff like that. And one that has resources to organizations and such, where they can go for help. And I might actually want to go an extra layer, if that goes really well, and throw in the assistive technology for people who are visually impaired and blind. Maybe.
That would be great.
That might be postgraduate. We'll have to see, but that's where I'm at.
At our meeting, because the instructors get together on Fridays, and we discussed how the week went and how the piece that we did is going to transition into the following week, which will be Monday for you all. And so I think that what we agreed upon as far as the whole accessibility piece, because Caitlin is going to be introducing you all to Bootstrap and the way that it's currently set up, the divs that you all have in the GitHub HTML file goes really well with that. Don't get too bogged down with my whole semantic piece, because there is also accessibility within Bootstrap.
Yeah,
and
there's
so
a lot of it now, actually.
Yeah, and so if you just having the knowledge of the semantic tags is great, because you can still use that with other projects. And if you want to have like a project from the code that we have to kind of parallel what you're going to be learning as far as the Bootstrap version, that would be great. But what I think what I'm saying is, just wipe your mind clean going into next week, because you're going to be back to working with the divs. But as long as you know that the divs can be changed to that semantic markup for accessibility, but also know that it's also built into Bootstrap, the two, they don't conflict with each other. They're just two different ways of achieving the same end. And I showed you one way. Does that make sense?
Yes. Now, what if we want to try to do the semantic stuff going forward? Is that going to cause problems? Like if
I wouldn't say it would cause problems, because we had you all create a separate folder for that. So you can definitely still do that, but it's the way that I did it is not a good fit leading into the whole Bootstrap direction that the capstone is leading into. So so with Bootstrap, what Caitlin was saying to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, Caitlin, that the Bootstrap is, the focus is more on the way that it's set up with div. And then I think within the divs would be the classes. So it would be like div class, blah, blah, blah.
Generally they use divs. It's not to say you cannot use other elements. Right. It's just that they have like Bootstrap, basically, without going too much into it, they have their own massive style sheet that like basically styles every single class that they have a JavaScript like basically script file that does a whole bunch of like performance things that you don't have to worry about. As long as you use the right classes and target things correctly, it does it all for you. And you just like import those into your file. Now, I don't want to say all. You're still going to have like things to do when you build like a more robust site, but it definitely get you started the basic functions of things on a website. And it's very customizable. It's extremely fast. Like if you want to get something up and running quickly, it's definitely like pretty easy to do that pretty quickly, because you're saving a lot of time with CSS, JavaScript, and all that stuff. So, but it is like mostly divs. Like when you go and look at their documentation, it's like div with a class, and the class is styled a specific way so that it looks a certain way on the page.
And it's totally accessible, Latonia. When you think about what came first, the chicken or the egg, as far as accessibility, divs with classes in them came first, and they were totally accessible, which is where Bootstrap is. Semantics came after that. Remember, we were talking about the evolution of HTML and things that aren't necessarily used anymore. Well, divs with classes is still definitely used. Semantics came after that. So in terms of looking at the timeline, the whole semantic push was the last piece that was added to that. So it's like it's saying, oh, you can do it this way, or you can use the div with the classes. I went to one of the accessibility websites, JAWS, which is where I got my certification. And when I looked at the back end of a lot of their demo pages, to my surprise, weren't using the semantics. So they're not even there, and they're a whole accessibility company. They are using the div with classes. So it's a great direction to go in, because what it'll do is if you go into a company and they're not using semantics, you're being taught divs with classes, and it's great for you to know both and then decide.
And it's also like, it just depends, right? Like most websites I've worked on mix them actually. Like they use the semantic elements to like lay out the larger structure of the page. And then a lot of times divs end up getting used for like layout pieces and things like that. Things that are not semantically important, but like require an additional container, right? Like I'm trying to think of like a concrete example. So sometimes you add extra divs as just like as a way to like chunk a bunch of pieces, like page elements together, so that they're easy to flow as a block, right? So like that it's easy to like move the block of like product content, for example, is often like chunked into a div, and like that's one that you could probably like come up with a semantic element for it. But like sometimes within the product content, there might be pieces you want to like block out into smaller things. And like, so divs get used all the time, essentially, when there are times when you need a container that doesn't have a semantic meaning to it. It's literally just for layout or for like helping with like the page respond better, or like other things like that. And so they get used together, I guess is the short version. I saw your question about how long do projects would like, so were you asking about in terms of timelines for projects, would be like how long it would take to build like a custom e-commerce platform, like in terms of your capstone?
A very long.
Sonia?
Yeah, I was just kind of, oh, go ahead.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, I was just curious. I was like, if we, like when we did the technical test, right? You all gave us the technical test for the application process, and they're like, oh, this is only going to take you so many hours. And I was like, what? When it was like 3 times that later on. So I'm just curious, like if you just picked a project from start to finish, if we knew everything we need to do, just how long would that generally take?
I can tell you one thing, which is that when it comes to time estimates for projects, I still do this. So, and I have 8 years of experience, so just take that as a grain of salt. I estimate how many hours I think a project's going to take me, and then I double it. So when you're brand new, I would say you should triple it because it just takes like, things take freaking forever. When I told you guys that like I spent literally like most of a week rebuilding a checkbox for mobile, like I literally spent most of a week rebuilding a checkbox for mobile because the client wanted like, because it's just one of those things where it's like, it seems simple on the surface, right? Where the client's like, oh yeah, we just want this like custom control. Like we want these custom checkbox options for like mobile. And I was like, okay, that's fine. So like building out the actual like custom piece was kind of hard by itself, but then I had to do all the data integration to make it actually interact with what it needed to interact with, right, in the application. And so it was like, okay, build out the feature, the part you can see that the client thinks isn't too bad. Like, okay, that's not too bad. But then it's like, oh, but now I got to integrate it into all this other existing stuff and make sure that it all still works. So it's like, that's why it's always feel like double or triple is a good idea. I would highly suggest, specifically from like an e-commerce standpoint, is like for your capstone, if that's what you end up moving forward with, is you're gonna want to look at integrating with third-party resources. So whether that's something like Stripe or Gumroad, or even potentially like something like Squarespace to like automate your checkout process. At minimum, you're going to need something to automate your payment process. From a legal standpoint, trust me, you don't want to be responsible for processing payments. There are like 1,000-person companies that is all they do, because the like list of laws around that is just like my mom was haranguing to me about the other day about how Chrome saves your like credit card information, and she's like they always ask you if you want to save it, and I was like yeah, but they don't save it if you tell them not to. They don't save it. She was like, I bet they save it anyways. I was like, I 100% bet that they don't, because Google doesn't want to get sued. Like, it's just one of those things. Like, there are legit like huge laws about a lot of this stuff, especially when it comes to like personal information that that people aren't always aware of unless you work in industry. Anyways, sorry, side note, but like, so I guess what I'm saying is like, when it comes to e-commerce, you're going to want to pull in a bunch of third-party things. So even though you're building like a custom solution, it's not less custom because you're building, like, you're kind of like bolting on third-party pieces. That's how most custom solutions are built today. So just keep that in mind. And that's going to be true for a lot of your capstones in general, like that you're going to pull in third-party stuff, and learning how to integrate those things is actually a really important part of your portfolio process. Like, the fact that you didn't like custom roll 100% of your solution is actually not a bad thing. Just be able to speak to what you pulled in and why, and how you integrated it. Like, that's all you need, because that's a valuable skill. There was some article I read a while back that was talking about how like developers are slowly becoming like the people who do the custom plumbing between like one existing piece of software and another existing piece of software. Like, because there's always this like integration point. They're like, we integrate seamlessly. And you're like, and then you try to actually make them integrate seamlessly, and you're like, you don't integrate seamlessly.
I just had this flash in my head of a plumber when you said custom plumbing. I'm like, oh my goodness, the professions are worlds apart, and how you just pulled that together just blew my mind.
They're different and similar all at the same time.
I was just gonna say, I've watched like our plumber and our electrician do stuff in our house lately, and I'm just like, it's like what I do. Like, you're following all of this everywhere and trying to figure out how it's all connected, and like, oh my God, I do that all day long.
Yeah, as someone that's done a decent amount at this point, thanks to remodeling a house, done a decent amount of amateur electrical work and plumbing, I'd actually argue they have a lot in common. I'm not going to start selling my services as a plumber or an electrician anytime soon, but
I'm still not touching anything. No, never.
But they have a lot in common. Anyways, but so I think the short answer is things always take longer than you expect them to, and don't be afraid to use third-party things.
Yeah,
and you'll hear this from the other instructors too. Like, that's not unusual, because I can't think of any of the instructors who I know, like specifically the types of things that they do on their like work day-to-day life. They all integrate with something. Like, it's just the nature of software development today. If you're determined to like 100% go it by yourself, it takes your double or triple timeline out to like quadruple, or it's like times 6, right? Because it just takes a long time to build all the extra pieces. Side projects. I used to do side projects, and then I had a kid. So he is my side project. But there's also a balance. I would do as many side projects as you can in your first few years as a dev, and then do side projects when you get excited about them, is my personal recommendation, because it may not feel like it right now, but if you literally start doing nothing but code 24/7, you will get super burned out. And what is a super fun job becomes a like really not fun job. So it's finding balance is important. And so it's okay to have, plus you get ideas from things like retiling your bathroom,
Oh man.
and how to solve problems and how to like think through things, and how plumbers and electricians actually have a lot more in common with developers than you think. And it's just,
You learn so many things doing other things. It's actually been nice. I will say that one thing that I do more often now than I did when I first started coding is that I find that I truly need time away from computers. And I never spent this much time on computers before. And since working full time as a developer, I realize how important that really is, because that gives me the mental break that I need. So even if I'm like retiling my shower, it's like physical labor, and it's therapeutic in a way, because I'm not staring at a computer screen, and it's a different kind of problem solving. And I still enjoy, like, obviously, like going outside. That's like one of my biggest things that I do to take a break, because I can't just like sit here for 14 hours. So definitely don't feel bad if you need to walk away and take a break. It's totally, honestly, you should like force yourself to do it, even if you don't want to, because it's very important. It's like a big tip.
I think ideas tend to come when you step away too.
Yes.
Like it helps you to refocus on the big picture and maybe how to re-strategize.
Yep. I often get solutions to work problems when I wake up in the morning, because I've dreamt about them and my brain has relaxed and I'm not, working in circles, and, it gets like exhausting. So
Yeah.
Couple things. Your brain cleans house at night when you sleep, or whenever you sleep.
yes.
Your brain actually, the research has proven it, refrags.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And years ago, when my husband was first doing computer science, back in the day, he was in a Fortran class at University of Nebraska, Lincoln. And he's in the lab till like 10 o'clock at night after already working a full-time day. And it was the thing was going to be due, he was in a real class and everything. So had to do it. And he just couldn't figure out. Finally said, I got to go home to Carolyn. It's late. I'm done. He gets up, he leaves the computer lab. And the minute he stepped out into the cold Nebraska air, he knew what to do.
Bingo.
But he also came home and went to bed, and then he took care of it the next day. But there's a case, just the physical, there's this,
Yeah.
the brain needs you to do that. And that's what children need that.
Yeah.
You need to, even if you're not taking a break, just get up, walk around the dining room table, although I can't because there's all this stuff in the way now. The chairs and the bears and in that it resets the brain. And I can't cite resources, but there is research. So if anyone really gives it, I can find some for you, because I'm a librarian. I can't help myself, and I'm into it. But anyway, yeah. So I mean, just saying what everyone else is saying, it's important, because I get going on this stuff and I forget that I've sat here for 12 days or whatever. And it's like, because I really love what I'm doing, and I just get, but there was
sorry,
there's a computer scientist named Babbage, a story about him. He's kind of a weird guy. He would never like stop. He just kept coding, and like he wouldn't get a shower, and he wouldn't, so his colleagues would like dump water on him, and the story they'd have to bring him food. And I guess when they'd rub his hands together, like pieces of dirt would we don't want to be like him, even though he was famous and did some stuff, but that's just kind of interesting. Anyway, I'm done.
I just wanted to add to that. Looking back on my experience with cohort 1, and now I have all this real world experience, and looking where you all are going with cohort 2, I don't think that I can stress it enough, the planning process. When Christy taught in cohort 1 and she was talking about wireframing, Christy, I think that was you. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but talking about the
I think Zoe actually
wireframing.
taught it, but yeah,
Oh, okay.
we
So
ended up
to-
teaching slightly different modules this time.
Oh, okay. But in learning about the wireframing, putting the thoughts together, and then the pseudo code, which is basically saying, here is where I am. I'm on this page, and this is what I want on this page. And when you click this button, this is where I want it to go. But when you click on this button, this is what I want to happen. So putting that together in your wireframes, begin to tell the story of what you want that visual to look like. So draw it out as is being recommended. Think about what you want there and what you want it to do. That translates into what type of code or what type of pieces you need to have, so that instructors can begin to start to have those conversations with you as to whether or not they're looking for you to code out certain pieces based on what's being presented to you in class, or we might say to you, well, you know what, this part, the shopping cart, is going to be better if you do an integration, because you don't want to have to worry about programming out taxes and fees and things like that on this back end when you already have this piece that you can integrate. And these types of conversations about the who, what, where, when, why, they take place in the planning phase, because what I'm realizing is that I did my helpers a disservice when I didn't know what my plan was. They couldn't help me. They always came back with another question. Well, okay, Dana, I see this. What is it supposed to do? Where is it supposed to go? You all need to have that piece ready for the one-on-one discussions and mentorships.
Which is not to say you have to have that completely fleshed out by Monday.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you for, yeah.
But we want you guys to start thinking about that, because it really is like, it's something, especially when it comes to side projects and things, I'm always tempted to skip the planning stuff, because the like building part is like often where you get like light bulbs and like there's fun challenges to figure out and like things to work through. But like, you just, without a bigger plan, it's a little bit like walking into the woods without a map. Like you just get it's very easy to get turned around and like off focus and off track and like just kind of lost in terms of where you are in the grander scheme of things. And like we're trying to, which is part of why we're trying to push like helping you guys figure out how to plan out your capstones better earlier, because I think a lot of students experience a certain amount of like, oh, now we're supposed to have a bunch of stuff done for our capstone last time. I wasn't teaching that part, but like I get that from talking to people, I kind of get that impression. So it's, yeah, and scope creep is a real thing. And it's an important thing to learn too, in terms of like learning when it's a good idea to let your scope creep and when it's a good idea to be like, nope, we're just not doing that because there is not time or space. And there's no hard and fast rules to that. That's just you just keep doing it and figure it out. And as you iterate stuff. But yeah, I mean, so I guess what I'm saying is like, don't stress too much about like, can I build this thing? Will I be able to build this thing? Is this possible? Like, just come up with an idea. Try to sort of flesh out like, here's where you think it could go from like a, even if it's just your flow chart could be a list. Like it doesn't have to be like, it doesn't have to be like a fully fleshed out like flow chart. It's just trying to like really put your ideas like concrete down on paper. And the more ideas you have out there, like Dana said, the more it's going to be easier for the instructors to be able to be like, so I'm seeing you building a thing that would take me 8 months to build at my level right now. I'm pretty sure you don't have time for that. So like, let's talk about what part of this you can successfully build for your capstone. It's just but like, if you don't have, if all of those ideas are in your brain and not out on paper someplace where other people can see them, then we can't give you that feedback, right? Like, so that's part of the point of this weekend's assignment. Is just like, get some of that stuff down on paper or, digital, whatever, outside of your head into a physical, digital, external space, so that we can help you guys with that. Because we just, honestly, we all want to succeed, like want you to succeed. And Latonya, you were asking earlier about capstone, like how complete your, like if you plan to, like what your plan for the capstone was at the beginning and it ends up being different at the end, is that going to affect whether or not you graduate? I'm pretty sure the solid answer is like, as long as you have some form of capstone completed, that's a no. I'm going to let, I think Jesse and the Hack Upstate team have the official say on that. I don't have to gavel, but we expect your stuff to change. Like, that's typical. Like, software is just one of those things where you get into the weeds of it and you're like, oh shoot, I hadn't thought about this aspect of this problem. And then you kind of end up taking it back to the whole team being like, so here's this thing, how do we change what we're doing based off of that? So that's it's typical. Pivots happen. Don't stress about it. We're not going to this is not a plan up front and then build exactly what you planned. This is a get an idea of what you're doing so that you have a roadmap that you can modify as you're going.
Okay. Yeah, because I was thinking like, what if you put all this energy in and then in the end, you didn't have time to actually make your project look, glistening, but you got all the lessons you needed to out of that process. So
yeah. So and we expect
us.
that. Yeah. I mean, you don't, for one thing, I still scope stuff wrong sometimes. And I've been doing this a lot longer than you guys have. So it's just, you just do that. We don't expect you to be able to scope it correctly right out of the gate. That's just not, you don't have the technical experience for it. And even then, even when you have more technical experience, you still scope stuff incorrectly sometimes. It just happens. So yeah, it's a process and we expect it to be a process. So
Latonya, I spoke of that in my capstone presentation. I talked about how I scoped wrong and where I wound up, and then I presented. That is a totally acceptable thing to do when you present in your capstone. We all gave little, well, the majority of us gave little introductions on what our projects were and some of the successes and where we scoped wrong or where we completely failed. And I thought that my story was especially funny. So I didn't mind telling it at all.
And honestly, what you learned out of the process is just as valuable from a job application. This sounds crazy, what you struggled with and what you learned and how you overcame those problems. But that's honestly that's really good fodder for talking about in interviews, because nobody wants to hire a dev who hasn't learned anything in the last 3 to 6 months. You want to hire people that are trying to learn. And if you're actively aware of issues you've been having and you're learning from them, that's proof that you're learning, right? So it's just I actually have a whole section on my resume related to my jobs that are just what I did, what I learned. Actually, it's what I did, what I learned, and I should know this. It's a long time. It's on my portfolio website, which is I'm not going to refer you to because it's terrible. They're
Is it what I did, what I learned, and what I know? Which is probably wrong.
It was it's the job. It's the job, what I did and what I learned. That's what it was. So, which was sort of like, that was in the digital version because I had plenty of space to do that. But it's just a way of like, yeah, talking about what you're gaining from the struggles you're having. It's not that like you need to pretend you're having no struggles. If that makes sense. So.
And also keep in mind our format of how we measure you all for cohort 2, which is different from cohort 1. Everyone felt that it was more important to measure your progress. And you all are doing that anyway. You're checking in. You're submitting your assignments. You're getting feedback from us. And as long as you're participating, and as long as you're doing the in-class assignments and the homework projects that we're assigning, you are progressing. Now, within that, we're saying done or not done as far as each project for each week goes. So there's no right or wrong in this, but I can't speak for everyone else, but just based on the way that it's set up, even if you start out with more not dones, you will eventually get to a point where if you keep pushing, you keep learning, you keep submitting things to the instructors, they give you feedback, you are going to get to the point where you may have to circle back and say, you know what, I couldn't finish this on this particular week, but I'm going to finish it now. There's nothing stopping you from circling back and getting that 2-point done designation. Now, in Google Classrooms, it still may show as a late, but guess what? We've already told you all, lates don't count against you. All it does is it gives us an indication that if you're going from one week to the next where you're not able to complete certain things, that just lets us know that you need more mentorship, maybe more one-on-one. Maybe you're not raising your hand during class to let us know that you need help. That lets us know that we need to reach out to you. So I think we have the perfect system in place for everyone to succeed as long as they want to for cohort 2. Would you agree, Christy?
Yeah, I don't know that it's perfect because we keep fixing things, but yeah, it's I agree. I think that if you want to succeed, you should be able to.
Yeah, maybe perfect wasn't an overstatement. I would I would say that we have the goal is clear, and there, we tweak it in between, but the goal is clear.
I think if more organizations had this kind of approach, it would be like the best place to work. It's
Probably, you're not wrong.
Huh?
I said, I don't think you're not wrong.
But no one said anything. I'm like, well, you're supposed to say, thank you. No.
Yeah, I was going to say thank you for your feedback.
The feedback-based results of management, it's like, I've worked with really great management, and then there's the other story, and it's like, yeah, I mean, this is a really good role model for an organic organization that grows with the people who are there, be employees, students, whatever. And I could see, this being used in some way as a model for teaching other boot camps and other, little PR there for you.
LaTanya, to answer your question in the chat, is it possible for your capstone to be too unambitious? I think yes. So it is possible. If you're like, my capstone, I'm going to build an intake form and that is all that is going to happen. Like, it's possible for it to be way like too small, right? But I think that's the point of the planning stuff, is like, we're going to be able to be like, hey, I think you can accomplish more than this, right? Like, and probably what's going to happen is like, I would encourage you to scope your capstone ambitiously and then scope it down, right, into this is the minimum viable product on my capstone. And these are the things that if I have time, I would like to add these features, right? like have a laundry list of things that are like, if I can complete my minimum viable, right? These are the things I want to add. And then if you get to those, that's awesome, right? But if you don't, then you've at least focused on the core functionality of what you need to have done so that you can launch the thing. And just for the record, this is a common issue in software development in general, like getting clients and businesses to identify what is actually the minimum viable that they're like willing to launch with. And not just be like, well, what about that? And what about that? And what about that? But we still need it all done by the same day. Is that okay? Okay, great. So it's just it's part of it. So I would say, like, from talking to all of you, I'm not too concerned about anybody having like way too unambitious of a project. But we'll give you feedback. if people are like, if the instructors take a look at like your project proposal and are like, I think you could do more, like, I think you can pull off more than this, they'll tell you, right? Like, it's not like, we want you guys to all manage to build the maximum of your ability. But we also don't want you to be like hitting the point that like we had a fair number of students hit at the end of last cohort, which was like, oh, I have this proposal for my project, and now we have 2 weeks until capstones are due, and I don't really have much of it built either. So there's like a balance there of we want you to be making progress on it, but it also is, we don't want you to be like feeling like it has to be something you can feel like you can accomplish in the last 2 weeks either. So.
Latanya, I was just going to, I'm sorry, Christy. I thought you were done.
Oh, no, I was answering another question, but you're welcome to go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to jump in on the next question that Latonia had, which was, she made a comment. She was thinking more like not a bunch of pages streamlining. I was going to speak to the actual presentation at the end of the program when you're presenting. So you definitely want to give the big picture of what your project was, and regardless of what you have sitting in the background, you have to think of what you want to present within that 3 to 5 minutes that Jessie is going to allow each one of you to speak. So regardless of if you have 1 page or 10 pages, just be prepared to tell the story of what you were able to produce and what you think is most important to show. That's all I wanted to say about that.
And then, maintenance required. Maintenance required is always a fun question. There's often maintenance required, but like, we're not expecting you guys to be like hiring someone to like monitor how things are going. But if you're going to publish something and put it out on the internet for other people to use, like, you're probably going to expect that like you're going to be getting feedback and like you will want to figure out a way to pay attention to it. Is that kind of what you were asking?
Yes, I just wasn't sure if you could actually create a scenario where we put something out and then say it does go public or what have you, and then you you have to take care of that thing now. So
yeah, I mean, if that's a reality, right? Like, so it's an important thing to think about. It's like, yeah, like thinking about maintenance. I'm not going to say it's like it should be the primary driving factor in your capstone project, but thinking about what it looks like to pay attention to the thing moving forward. We're going to probably discourage you from building something that like requires a ton of time and energy to like maintain and keep up and running, unless it's going to also be figuring out a way to pay you. Would be my personal suggestion. So, like your e-commerce idea, Lasagna, like if you think that you're gonna be able to generate enough revenue from that it's going to be worth the time and energy of you, like the maintenance you might need to be putting into it, that's great. But like, if that ends up not being the case, like we want to empower you to be able to make that kind of decision too. So, and like, it's possible to set up something like that so you don't have to pay tons and tons of attention to it, which is part of the reason, extra reason it's good to integrate a third-party payment processor. Because especially if you're distributing digital stuff, there's not like shipping and handling involved. So you can make things pretty hands-off, but you still have to like plan on checking in on it once every week or two to make sure that things aren't breaking or yeah, that kind of stuff.
These are
All
all
right.
really great questions.
I think we're like technically, I was very ambiguous. I accidentally posted like 1 to 3, but then I modified it to 1 to 2 because I didn't know if it was 1 hour. It's supposed to be 1 hour or 2 hours. But does anybody have any additional questions? And then we'll probably call it a day.
I just kind of popped in for a little moral support. I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed by the capstone project. And I don't know, I've been feeling like one of the reasons that appealed to me about coding as like a career path, and what I've seen reflected in what you guys have all been talking about, your own careers, like all the different instructors have been talking about, is that you'd be more like working with a group of people where you'd all have a piece of the project, but you'd be working together and creating something bigger than you could create on your own, you know, like in a team with other people. And the idea of just trying to like do this all by myself is just kind of feeling a little bit overwhelming. And I keep having these cool ideas that end up being like, I'm like, no, this is impossible. I can't do this all by myself. I don't know. And I was really, I really wanted to do something language related because I'm hoping to go in that direction with my new coding abilities at the end of this program, or at least eventually. That may not be my first job, but kind of as a goal eventually. And I was kind of overwhelmed by like the amount of language learning and language related stuff that's already out there that's like so developed, and like what could I possibly contribute that's as good as, you know, the magnitude of these programs that are made by companies that, you know, have a lot more resources and stuff. And then I was looking for like natural language processing libraries and stuff like that, and most of it was in Python. But I finally found a few in JavaScript, and I hit on the idea of, there was one of them that was only available in English. And I hit on the idea of like trying to contribute to what's available out there for natural language processing by creating some type of a thing that users would interact with, where they could basically help translate that library into other languages that they knew, but they didn't know how to code. And I was all excited about that, but, you know, especially contributing to something in like the larger research that's going on, you know, or the what's available to people to use. But then I realized this week, and I was kind of all stressed out about it, that the way that we're approaching this, having something where basically the whole thing is driven by like the more complicated, like the more behind the scenes, like JavaScript type of stuff that we haven't even gotten to yet. Like, I don't even know how to plan an interface because I have no idea what it needs to look like, because it's going to be driven by like how the JavaScript part works, you know, in order for the users to be able to, like, I don't know what the users would need to do in terms of like a gamer and interaction. I don't know. So I kind of got away from that because I feel like basically I've decided this week I need to do a different capstone. And I had this really cool idea that I came up with at a hackathon, like that I went to, a Hack Upstate hackathon that I went to when I was still hoping to get into this program. And I've kind of transitioned toward that. Like, I have this brochure that I picked up at the hackathon, and it's like a walking tour of downtown Syracuse. And because I was like there for a hackathon, I kind of had those type of ideas going around in my mind. And I was like, this should not be like a brochure that people have to sit and look at a map and like read a paragraph while they're trying to look at the building or whatever. This should be on people's phones, and they should be able to like listen to it while they're walking around, and it should be connected to the GPS so that like it plays, you know, appropriate information for whatever building they're standing in front of or street they're walking down. And then I really got excited because I thought about the fact you could add like sound effects and stuff. You could make like, the sounds of the factory working, or like the people calling to the mules along the canal trail, and stuff like that, where the canal used to be, or the trains going down the streets, like how there used to be trains going down the streets in Syracuse and stuff. I don't know. And like, have like local people talking about their experiences, when they used to work in different places, older people, and, it just seemed like a really cool thing. But I'm kind of looking online at the walking tours that already exist. Like I kind of Googled it, and I'm seeing like these, huge professional, like, tourist things that are, like have way more features and are, like 59 cities with, professional filmmakers recording this stuff and all the features that they have. And I don't know, I'm just kind of feeling like there are things out there where people can drag and drop their own audio into it. And, the city of Syracuse could create this using one of these apps rather than this little thing that like, maybe I could do one street or something, but it's kind of feeling overwhelming right now that like, I don't know. So I figured I'd just drop in the office hours and see some other people rather than sitting in front of the computer by myself feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah. And like, so here's the thing, right? Like there's a lot of software in the world. So like, it's unlikely that any of you guys are going to come up with like an idea for which there's no software that exists.
Right.
So don't feel like the fact that there are other people solving a similar problem, like actually consider that validation that it is a problem, first of all, like, and like, don't stress about like needing to build out, like, because what you're talking about, right? Like the whole, like the walking tour piece, like that's actually a really cool idea. And there's a whole technological side to like building out like a platform, but there's also like the whole content side, right? And like, and they're really like both, but we're not going to be expecting you to be spending like huge quantities of time building out all of that content, right? Like that's not.
Yeah, I understand that. It's just once I have an idea and I see what it could be, like that's what I want it to be.
Yeah, and like it's okay to bring like 2 or 3 ideas. Like I would encourage you to just like do a super quick write up on both of those ideas. Like I'm not talking like crazy.
Yeah, I already did
just
the
like
one. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, and talk to the instructors, talk to the other students about them, get feedback, and then it's okay to start like.
You're frozen.
Yeah, Christy, you're
And
frozen.
Kyle, I put a few comments specifically for
Thank
you.
you. Yeah, I know I
They
got
may
going
be
and I
helpful,
kept talking. But
and we can kind of later, if you want, with the other idea you had. Okay, so
yeah.
I hear you. I know some people that with that previous idea might be able to help you.
Yeah, I mean, this is what the second idea, I feel like it's more relatable and other people might get excited about it. And maybe after the program, other people might help me like expand it and make it into a real thing. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely feel like I could reach out to, like the different historical societies and museums and the library and stuff that were involved in producing this brochure for like some of the information and audio and stuff that I could put in it and stuff. But
I think too, you just remember, this isn't quite what you're getting at, but there was someone, I don't know if it was the first cohort or it's another hack upstate person. I mean, I've been part of that too. That did a walking thing of downtown just to help people in real time with like a GPS thing and figure out where the hell they were. Because
oh, like more like Google
not
Maps.
a big city, but if you don't know, Hanover Street goes over here. And then when we first moved here, there was all this construction and all these one-way streets. It took me like an hour to get out of downtown because I didn't know where to go. And I grew up in Boston. So, so that kind of thing. I don't know if you want to make it more of a help someone find their way around kind of thing. And there could be key points that tell them, oh, this landmark is around the corner, or I don't know.
Right.
The thought. I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Kyle, I was just going to add, you don't, I heard you mention, well, what if somebody already has this, and that kind of speaks to the imposter syndrome that a lot of people like to throw that term around. But here's the thing, you have an Uber and you have a Lyft, you have a Grubhub and you have a DoorDash.
Right.
I mean, essentially with Grubhub, it's about putting it in order, having someone pick up the food and
Mhm.
bring it to you and you pay,
Right.
right? There are things that I like about Grubhub that I
Mhm.
don't like about DoorDash. There are things that I like about DoorDash that I don't like about Grubhub. I
Yeah.
would say I I would
More
say
about
that in
scale, I was feeling,
right,
within the six, I mean, yeah, the 6 months, 24 weeks, whatever it is. Yeah.
right, exactly. So you could, and I that's where I drew my inspiration,
Mhm.
which was I drew my inspiration from Uber, right? Not knowing how much
Right.
work was in front of me, but you have to start somewhere to know what
Right.
you're getting into to try to figure out how to scale. And as long as
Mhm.
you start it, you've done a good amount of the planning already. It sounds like
Mhm.
what I hear you saying is, this is what I want to do. I'm just not sure. You're
Right.
this is at the you're still very early on in the progress,
Mhm.
which is what Christy was saying. So
Mhm.
everything that you're feeling, everything that you're talking about is
Mhm.
exactly where you're supposed to be. If you felt like you had clear direction on your project right now, my question to you would be, then why are you in the boot camp if you've already got it figured out?
Right.
Maybe you need to be in a
Right.
master's program somewhere. That
Mhm.
this is what Careers in Code was created for.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you are right where you need to be.
Okay. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I also want to make sure like that it doesn't become too much of a like just an overwhelming amount of stuff that I'm putting in that has nothing to do with coding too. Like, I guess that's another thing that I'll have to figure out how to balance, you
That'll
know.
come with time.
And then I don't know, I guess maybe probably we'll talk a little bit about this when we make our presentations, but I'm not sure what parts of it would be like. I want to have a balance of like the HTML and CSS and the more visual stuff and and like JavaScript and the more behind the scenes stuff. I'm not sure, like probably connecting GPS to something would involve JavaScript. Is that, I don't know.
So that
I'm,
you
or
you'll be
maybe
going
I
you'll be
could
going
come up
over
with some
that.
features that would use that. I don't know. I don't want it to be just like basically.
All of those questions are going to be answered in the coming
Mhm.
modules. Remember, we're taking this piece by piece. All
Yeah.
of the questions that you're asking are questions that are going to be answered in each module.
Okay.
Actually, when you start learning how to do the API calls with Ryan, Ryan is going to have the answers to a lot of the questions that you just asked. It essentially goes into like how to do an API call if you need to do an API call. When I started my project for to do the model of central bus and
Mhm.
GPS and getting from point A to point B, Ryan was the one who helped me with that. And then
Mhm.
beyond what he was doing, there was another professor another instructor who checked in with me, and I said, I'm having trouble with this API call. He was the one who told me that the API that Central was tapped into was being provided by a vendor who had put up a firewall to me because I was trying to
Right.
do it from my computer, and they could do it from their system because their system had been cleared for the
Mhm.
API. At that point, I didn't know that getting into certain data structures was going to be restricted. It's just another part of the learning process. If you try to predict every variable right now of what you can and can't do, or of
Right.
where you can and can't enter, you're kind of, I don't want to discourage you from thinking ahead. I
Mhm.
want to encourage you not to worry about it.
Right. So you
Because
think that if I was working on the project and I realized that I didn't have enough of a certain, thing in it, that I could find ways to, add features that would involve that or whatever, so that I would be using different aspects of what we're learning as opposed to just like audio and visual on a website type of thing.
Yeah, Kyle, I think that anything is possible when you
Okay.
put your mind to it. I think that we as instructors are here to teach and provide you support and to help you with scope and to help you figure it
Mhm.
out and to give you the tools that you need so that you can put the code together. And
Right.
I yeah, and what you've done is you've put together the plan and you said, this is what I want to do, and I need help figuring this out. And
Right.
so how the instructors are going to help you is with you putting that on paper, which you said you've already done. The instructors will help you to figure that out along the way. And I just don't want you to be under an undue amount of anxiety because
Yeah, I've been
because
doing a lot of
we
that this week.
so well, and I recognize it, but listen, this is
Thank
a
you.
24-week program. We've done about
Yeah.
4 weeks already. You still have 20 weeks to figure this out. The only thing
Right.
the only thing that we're asking you all to do right now is to become familiar with the code that you've already been given, and to do your wireframes and your mock-ups,
Right.
to come up with the idea. If you have 3 different ideas, then so be it. But there's, you still have a number of weeks that are coming up
Okay.
where all of that can be looked at. And that's why
Right.
in the chat I
Yeah,
put,
pain.
phew, I put, I don't know if you saw that.
I have trouble like paying attention to people talking and reading the chat at the same time. I often find that in
Listen,
class too.
no, yeah, no, not that I
Yeah.
wanted you to look in the chat,
Right,
but just to say, I was probably Kyle in cohort 1, and I'm sitting here laughing because I'm thinking, did I worry that much? I probably did. At some point, I probably was just like, and I want to do this and I want to do that. And you know what, Kyle?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was me. I'm not afraid to admit it.
Okay.
Well, and it's
Good to hear, because yeah.
sorry for disappearing. That
That's
was like
okay.
literally my internet, like my whole, like the power, all of it just like kicked like right in the middle of me talking.
That's all right.
There, it's really windy here today, so I have no idea what just happened. But yeah, I mean, don't be afraid to present your idea. Like we were actually talking about this with Sonia and Carolyn earlier. Like this is really about getting your ideas out there, and then like the other students and the teachers are going to be the ones that are going to be your, like the rest of your team, right? In the sense that like we're going to help you brainstorm and figure out what's possible and what's not. I can actually guarantee that almost 100% of you, the plans and designs and things that you come up with now are going to change.
Okay.
Like, just be ready for that. It's fine.
Yeah.
Like this is not a like finalized, which is part of why I was like, just practice, like consider the wireframe like a thought exercise in terms of like taking your own ideas and figuring out how they could lay out on paper.
Right.
And don't take a ton of time to do that. Like do it on a whiteboard, do it on a piece of paper, take another piece of pen and just like kind of look at different possible like containers and stuff, because that's a useful thing for you to get experience doing, regardless of whether you
even if I change it later. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what got me
throw the whole thing out the window and
my
start
project.
over later.
I don't know. Overall, do you think it's a good idea to start with something that, like, it kind of seems like this is oriented to plan something visually, like what you want it to look like and what you want it to be, and then figure out all the back end stuff later, as opposed to like designing something that's designed around the back end that I don't really know enough about yet. So overall, do you guys think that's a better plan to try to make that switch?
Yeah, I mean, so this is something that instructors talked a lot about when we were just like designing the curriculum. It's a really hard thing, right? Because like ideally we would just teach you all of the things all at once so that you know everything and then you can plan stuff. But it's just like, that's not how the world works. And so like we kind of had to start someplace, and the advantage of starting on the like visual side is that it gives us a chance to try and help you guys break down the like thought processes that go into like the problem solving stuff, that you're going to need all of those thought processes through all of the whole the whole thing. And the other reality is that like there is sort of a like, it's not a disconnect, but there's a handoff. I'll go with a handshake. There's a handshake really between all of the data stuff on the back end, like where the data comes from and how it gets displayed on the front end. And there really is like so that's actually part of our design process where I work, like is when we start a new project or a new feature, if it involves adding additional data, we actually start at that handshake where we agree on like here's kind of what we want to do. We know approximately what we want to do. Maybe we make a wireframe, like, so we have like an agreement of this is what we want to do. And then we go, what data do we need to make that happen? And then we go, what does the data model look like? So what is that actual, like, that's where it meets, right? Is the data model, because in order for me to build the front half, I need to know what format the data is going to be in and what data there's going to be. And in order to build the back end, they have to know what data they're supposed to be serving up and what format it's supposed to be in.
Right. So it kind of all starts in the middle usually then.
Yeah. So like, and not every team works that way, but it's a common pattern, right? Like in software development. And so like so wireframes are really like, they are visual, but they're really about getting something out on paper or like out in front of people that everyone, like the whole team, back end, front end, everyone, like client, all the people can agree, like, this is approximately what we want to build. Because trust me, you can do that kind of thing with like a list of requirements, but you'll have 6 different people in the room and you'll have 6 different opinions about exactly what the requirements are. And so the more you can kind of say like, this is like, have the approximate like visual, because so many people are very visual in terms of how they understand things. Like this is kind of like, you know, this is the features we want on the page. This is approximately how we're laying them out. And this is like, as a result, like, here's the things that happen related to this page. Like, that gives you a much stronger plan than just like a list of requirements for everyone to kind of gain consensus around, right? And so this stuff is very elementary in the sense of like, I'm literally asking you to put boxes on paper, but it's like, but it's one of those, like, just like Post-its are a very useful organizational tool on some level, like very simple. It's a useful thing for figuring out. Sometimes figuring out what you want to build and what you can build is harder than building it.
Oh yes.
I am a fond person who says that people make software harder. Like, people are harder than the software a lot of the times. Not always. When you're in the middle of a technical problem, it doesn't feel that way. But like, but often it really is the like the consensus building and the people part of it that's really hard. And so we wanted to give you guys at least enough of those tools to like, do that stuff and breathe.
Yes, I know. Thank you all for listening to my little tirade.
Came in a little bit in this, and I direct messaged you a little something too.
Thank you.
So, believe me, people are walking around seeming like they're fine. We're all going, oh my God. All right, where's the sick word? I know. So it's okay. You're all right.
Thank you.
And also, I will say, we're not just putting you through anxiety for the sake of putting you through anxiety. Like, the feeling like you jumped and you don't have a parachute is a good feeling to get used to. Don't actually do that, please, ever. But that feeling is a good feeling to get used to, because you will run into that feeling over and over again when you're trying to solve a problem that you haven't solved before. There is always that, like, it's the same thing with like test taking, right? Like, you sit down in front of a test and you're like, I don't know any of this. Right. Like, well, probably you know more than you think you do. You just need to put it down. It's the same. It's the same thing. It's that it comes up as part of, like, people call it imposter syndrome, but it's really like, it really is like when you're taking a risk on trying to solve a problem you haven't solved before. It's anxiety inducing because you're just like, I don't have a roadmap for this. I don't know how to do this. But it's the more comfortable you can get into that feeling, and the better at like figuring out whatever strategies work for you to like step back and like remove yourself at least from that, like, a little bit, so that you can say like, you can start looking at like, okay, what's causing me to feel this way? How can I approach the things that I need to fix? Like, to like get through these, like looking at the problem in a bigger way and moving past that. Like, it's a part of life in this industry. Like, I think it's a part of life in a lot of industries, but like, it's good practice. We don't want to cause anybody.
At least it hasn't been as bad as the process that led me to eventually finding this program as the solution to what I was trying to do. Like 3 years ago when I was trying to figure out how to go back to school and stuff like that. hasn't been that bad yet, but I don't know. Yeah, thank you guys, because I don't know. I kind of knew some of the stuff you told me, but I don't know. I just needed to hear it, and I didn't want to end up doing like
You need
kind of
someone
freak out
to
presentation
validate
that I
it
just
for
did
you.
at the more professional type of presentation that we're supposed to do Monday night. And I figure if I just talk to somebody who kind of knows how I'm feeling, and I hadn't even run my ideas past anybody who knew anything about coding yet. So
Don't freak out. It's
Yeah.
thank you.
I would argue that most professional presentations I've been to are a lot less professional under the hood than you would expect.
Yeah.
And B, we know that most of you guys are completely new at this. And so like, this is practice.
Right,
Like,
right. Yeah.
This is not the final audience.
Right.
Like, this is just practice.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and I just want to add, because I know that we have to wrap up in about a minute here, that Kyle, just about every job that I've had since I've graduated from careers in code, each company has been in some phase of figuring something out.
Mhm.
And I have just been added to the group of workers who have been assigned with just helping to figure something out. I have yet to walk into any company that deals with tech, whether it be designing websites or some type of remote medical support system where some part of that company was not in a phase of trying to figure stuff out. And then it trickles down. So this is not something that you're just going to experience as a part of the educational piece. This continues. And so imagine being on the other side of boot camp and you have an internship or a job, and the owner of the company or organization comes up and says, oh, I had someone who was working on this website and now they're no longer here, and now I need you to look at this and I need you to put these images up or make things happen with the links and things like that. And so it doesn't stop here. That this is where it begins. But I say that to say that you just work through it, and with a job you don't. I'm glad that I had the boot camp to kind of help me to deal with the phase that you're going through now. Because had I just come out of school and gone to the job site and realized, oh, they don't have things set up, they expect me to figure things out, it would have come as a huge surprise to me. So I was really prepared to take that on once I got beyond boot camp.
I imagine it also gets easier once you've done it multiple times and you kind of feel like, okay, well, this is new, but I've done something like this before. I was able to overcome this on this occasion and that occasion, whatever. And you just kind of have.
Exactly. It's okay to learn on the job.
Yeah.
It's okay to learn on the job. It's okay to figure things out, and it's okay to celebrate errors. Had I not been receiving those messages during boot camp, I would have been, oh my gosh, yeah, I would have just been like a big bundle of nerves. And not to say that I wasn't, but I was just prepared to be able to push through it, is what I'm saying. And that's all.
Good.
Yeah, it's one of those things where things often look really nice and shiny and put together on the outside. It's like the Instagram version of life versus like actual life. Right? It's the same kind of a thing where it's just like you have the face that everyone presents, and then you have all the crazy hair and people running around like
that would be me.
So it's just there's really both pieces, and you just have to like trust that you will figure it out.
Right.
I would say two things: trust that you'll figure it out, and B, don't be afraid that if you feel like you're not figuring out what you should be figuring out, feel free to reach out to other people for help, because there's a balance, right? In terms of like junior devs often run into this issue of like, it's good to Google for a certain period of time to like try and figure out if you can solve the problem. But once you get to a point where you really feel like you're just spinning your wheels and you're just finding somebody else who knows more about it, or who at least you can talk to like
Mhm.
give you some like sounding board advice, right? Like we're doing right now, like sounding board advice
Mhm.
is super, super important. And so, and knowing that sort of when you're kind of on the cutoff of like officially like me trying to figure this out more on my own right now is not helping anyone. I just need to like
Right.
either step back and like
Mhm.
go for a walk or like take a break or like something,
Yeah.
or
It's-
like find somebody else to give you some other input.
Yeah, it's like you get to that point where you're doing the same thing over and over in the same way.
Mhm.
It
Just want to
doesn't
say
work.
goodbye, everyone. I gotta run.
Yeah,
Bye.
Have
I
another
actually
Okay,
need to
bye-bye.
too.
So Kyle, we're a community.
Bye.